I thought this would have been a fitting time to push out this video because, just as a PSA, tomorrow, around this time actually, we are going to have the first of the raid testing for patch 11.1. There's going to be a heroic boss raid testing available, which is, you know, a cool situation for you to go in and start trying your testing your character, particularly for healers, because, you know, DPS players always have their target dummies to try things out, right? They even have simulations to try things out, but for healers it's a bit more complicated than that. So having a more live setting to test your experiments is going to play out much better for you to get a feel of your spec. So for today we have something quite interesting because it's about Restoration Shaman, which has been quite the popular spec at the beginning of this expansion. However, only one of their hero talents, which is totemic. Ever since the release of the expansion, Farseer has not found a lot of room to play, and even more disappointingly, when Farseer did find room to play, they were practically just a worse totemic. They were simply copying the talent setup, picking up all of the chain heal talents available and just continue to play around chain heal just like totemic, except a worse version of it. So what is exciting about patch 11.1 is that there might be a secret, hidden, cursed dish that has been cooked in this patch around a rather unsuspecting talent, one of the new talents added in patch 11.1. 10% of healing waves healing is duplicated onto each of your targets with Riptide. Now, sometimes some of these talents do actually not count over healing. Sometimes they do. You know, whenever you have these talents about splashing, spreading, duplicating, or copying some of your healing, some of those count your overhealing, some of those do not. In this case, which is what makes this more interesting, is that this talent will count overhealing. So you see that if I healing wave myself, the Whispering Wave's 10% duplication does count overhealing. My healing wave was fully overhealed, but the duplication was still there. So this means that when you can spread as many Riptides as possible, you're going to gain 10% more value from your healing wave, and then 10% more, and then 10% more for however many Riptides you have out. And you can have upwards of 10 Riptides out. And if you have 10 Riptides out, you are practically doubling the healing done of your healing wave. Now, obviously, it's very difficult to calculate the total heal, for example, the difference between a chain heal and a healing wave, especially because both of these abilities have a lot of multipliers and added effects. For example, chain heal can heal more if you use Ancestral Reach. It can also heal more whenever you use Unleash Life. It can heal more when you proc High Tide. It can heal more when you play Totemic if the chain heal is spawned from your totems, because of lively totems making the chain heal 25% more. Healing Wave, on the other hand, can heal more if the target being healed has Deluge on, so it's 15% larger heal. It can heal 20% more if you're healing the target with Earth Shield. It can heal 50% more every 3 casts of Healing Wave because of Undulation. But in general, the chain heal should be about twice as powerful, perhaps slightly more than twice as powerful as your healing wave. However, once we have established that now you can almost near duplicate the value of this healing wave by spreading it around multiple targets, is where things start getting interesting. In particular, because, as you might know, the plight of Restoration Shaman in this season in particular, Chain Heal is a particularly costly talent to use as a spell, because it does drain a lot of your mana, so it's not that possible to just simply easily spam this ability in raid. You are very mana starved as a Resto Shaman, and one of the benefits of playing with this build would be that Healing Wave practically costs half as much mana as one Chain Heal, and then you would be spamming way more Riptide, which is also very cheap. It costs less than a third of a single Chain Heal. But this build has also other valuable things. For example, if we pull off our stopwatch over here, and you look at the amount of Riptides being cast in a set duration, you will see that you have about 1, and then you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. You casted about 8 Riptides in 20 seconds, and don't forget that every 4 hard casted Riptide you spawn a 5th one, an extra one for free. So if you cast 8 of them, you would also have gotten 2 Riptides for free, for a total of 10 Riptides out in 20 seconds. Now, mathematically, of course, this is impossible. If Riptide has a 6-second cooldown per charge, it means that if this is 0 seconds and we were able to cast 10 of them in 20 seconds, or spawn 10 of them in 20 seconds, you cast the first Riptide here, the second Riptide here, the third Riptide here, and then the next charge will be off at 6 seconds, the following charge will be off at 12 seconds, and the third charge we cast initially will be off at 11 seconds. So you cast 3 initially, and then you cast 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. So the total amount of Riptides out should have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus 1 from Primal Tidecore, spawning the extra free one. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not 10. There is 3 extra Riptides that were able to be casted. The reason why that happened with this build is that unlike the traditional Farseer build that wants to use Unleash Life, because Unleash Life also gives you a longer Ancestor, it lasts for 12 seconds, and then you make the Ancestor stronger, 25% stronger, and then you make it last longer, 4 more seconds, so one Unleash Life will give you 16 seconds of Ancestor, and Unleash Life has a 15-second cooldown, so practically you can keep up one Ancestor permanently, and you can double up whenever you activate Ancestral Swiftness. In this build, you don't care about spawning Ancestors for a long time, you care about spawning as many of them as possible. Why? Because of this. When an Ancestor is called, they reduce the cooldown of Riptide by 2 seconds. So now that we know this, you want to take this instead. Ancestors have a 20% chance to call another Ancestor for 6 seconds. So that when they call the other Ancestor, you get 2 more seconds of cooldown reduction on Riptide. And because you want to spawn as many as possible because of this CDR, you don't take the 4 seconds extra duration. Instead, you take Riptide has a 15% chance to call an Ancestor to your side. And when that Ancestor is called, it also has a 20% chance to spawn another one, which is going to be more CDR on Riptide. And because of this, it makes sense why you would want to play with Undulation instead of Unleash Life, because this can proc much faster. You know, Unleash Life has a 15-second cooldown, whereas Undulation, all you need to do is cast 3 healing waves, which is 1.6 seconds, 1.6 seconds, and then 1.6 seconds. So it's 4.8 seconds. You can spawn nearly 3 times as many Ancestors by spamming healing wave than you can having to wait for the cooldown of Unleash Life. So the whole point is to take talents that allow you to spawn as many Ancestors as possible, to proc even more Ancestor spawning, and then synergize in the amount of Riptides you will be casting by spawning more Ancestors. And every one of these Ancestor spawning gets you to cast more Riptides, which allows you to spread more Riptides out to give even more value to your healing wave. Now, what is positive about this spreading of Riptide is that it does actually count for your Cloudburst. This is already a good thing. If you put down Cloudburst now and we start healing ourselves, the HP, the health stored increase for the healing after will count all of these procs of Whispering Waves on players. So that's the first good thing. Unfortunately, talking about Cloudburst, but this is already live, however, in this version of the build, this will be much stronger. It won't count the extra healing from Tidewaters. This is a talent that right now is very weak, and there isn't really much of a reason to take this, simply because you don't get to use Riptide as often and you don't get to spread it as often, so the value of this Tidewaters is not that great. However, when you imagine having 10 Riptides out, suddenly this instant heal is now 1.8 million, because it's 180,000 per target with Riptide. For example, Downpour, which is quite liked by Shaman players, heals for 240k for 5 players. So that's a 1.2 million heal. So as long as you have 7 Riptides out, this Tidewaters is gonna match the power of Downpour in terms of healing done. And the good thing is that both of them happen nearly at the same time, because they both happen when you cast Healing Rain. So if you have 1, 2, and then 3, and then 4 players with Riptide, we can even Riptide ourselves, 5 players with Riptide, you put this down, everyone is instantly healed with Tide Waters. And then you activate Damper and they get healed again. Unfortunately, only Damper counts for Cloudburst, not the proc of Tide Waters, but even then, it now gives you a reason to actually use Healing Rain. Shamans have been quite annoyed having to move away from Totemic and being reminded that they now have to hard cast Healing Rain every once in a while, way more often than before. Well, now there is more of a reason to use this because of all of the Riptides that you will have out, plus Damper. Now you just gain more value by putting this down and then reactivating Damper. Then of course you have the other value of this build, which is obviously Ascendance. Because you are obviously playing with DRE and the amount of Riptides you are casting is very high, you get to proc DRE and get into Ascendance more often, which is also very good because it allows you to spread even more AoE healing by using your single target heal, your healing wave, just like we did right now. This was not planned, it wasn't scripted, right? It's a very good tool for a single target heal. It's also good when it comes to Shaman because for those who have been in Mythic raiding guilds and played in Mythic raid bosses, you will also know that what counts very often for your healing composition is also what the healers can do in terms of healing profile. For example, you need to have healers that are very good at raid healing, but at the same time you also need to have healers that are good at spot healing for all of these bosses with dangerous mechanics that target 3 to 4 players and they need to be focused directly. You might have noticed, for example, if you progressed Nexus Princess. Maybe not now after all of the stacking raid buff and all of the nerfs, but during tough progress of Nexus Princess, it was vital to have spot healing healers in that composition because of the extremely heavy damage 4 to 5 players, I think, were taking from the Queensbanes, from the Assassinates that were ticking down. So the extremely OP Flame Shaper Evoker wasn't really going to help much with that problem because they have absolutely terrible spot healing in this example. And same goes for Restoration Shaman when they play Totemic. When they play Totemic, really the main spot heal you have is Riptide. You know, that's it. Which is also very, very poor. Which is why, for example, Holy Paladin was extremely good in that fight because of their power to spot heal. Now this build is also valuable for Restoration Shaman because it does also change their healing profile. Unlike Totemic, which is very on rails when it comes to healing, it's just chain heal. It's just constantly 5 targets being healed, sometimes 6 targets being healed over and over again. You don't really aim. Basically, you are spray and praying your heals. You're not really aiming at players. In this version, you do have control over who you are spot healing. First of all, your Riptides are now much stronger. You have an even extra help with single target healing because of your ancestors that are going to copy. Where are they? Here, they're going to copy some of your single target heals. So when I do healing wave, they are also going to be healing waving. Actually, they are healing surging the target. So it's more healing for single target, which is very valuable. And you're still gaining AoE healing, of course, because you have Whispering Waves and because you are still stockpiling your healing inside of Cloudburst Totem, right? Even if most of what you're doing right now, most of what we are about to be doing right now is going to be single target healing, if we put down Cloudburst and start healing around, we will be able to get close to a 4 million heal inside of Cloudburst. And this is without, raid buffs, without intellect, without versatility from Mark of the Wild. It's without being able to make use of Mastery, because of course every player here is at full HP. So Mastery will not have an effect in this type of healing, and it is something that brings a valuable alternative to Restoration Shaman because of the different healing profile. You could still be playing Totemic and play a lot around chain heal and just random indiscriminate AoE healing to whoever chain heal targets, or a build more centered around single target healing, which would also give you more power into spot healing, into targeting particular players instead. This can double up on the value very well because it's very important to land the largest heal you can on a single player that is buffed as much as possible, because then all of this Splash to Whispering Waves healing is going to be based on the original heal, which means that if the original heal is on someone with the Heart Shield, who receives 20% more healing from you, and is on someone who already has Riptide on, so it receives 15% more healing from you, then the duplicated healing will be 35% stronger because of these two buffs, which is something you can't say about chain heal. You know, if I'm chain healing myself, my heal on me will be 20% stronger because I have Earth Shield, but the healing on everyone else will not be, because they won't have Earth Shield. But in the case of this spread healing, it will work exactly like that. You can spread your Riptides around, and then when you heal yourself, because you have Earth Shield, the value will also spread to all of the other players as well. It seems to be a possibly good dish in the next patch because of the amount of Riptides you can dish out, the CDR you can get from Offering from Beyond, and this new talent here, Splashing Your Healing Wave. You also have other synergies like the amount of Riptides casting giving you a lot of Ascendance procs, the extra value you can get on Tidewaters because now you have way more Riptides being out. One of the biggest benefits for me would also be the much more lax and lean requirements of mana. I have touched on this already, but Restoration Shaman really has problems with mana right now, and don't forget that next patch, or this patch, you are losing your tier set, and your tier set is the one that gave you 8% mana discount to the spells you were casting with Tidal Waves, which is Chain Heal. You always cast Chain Heal with Tidal Waves, so Chain Heal was always discounted by 8% in this current patch, and now in this new season you will lose this mana discount. So it would also be even more hurtful in terms of your mana, and this build on the other hand is borderline free. The amount of spells you're casting with Healing Wave, even if it's a lot of Healing Wave casting, it's still much cheaper than using Chain Heal. So it will allow you to heal more than a standard totemic build, also because you will simply have more mana left compared to a normal totemic build. The last point related to this build when it comes to Restoration Shaman is the stats. For the first time, possibly in like 3.5 expansions, it would be a good time to stop going crit verse. Instead, crit haste would be the new way to go. In this setup, it's just 3 crafted items, literally just 2 crit haste rings with haste crit gems and a haste crit necklace. Everything else is just the default tier set that you would have. And in this case, we're not even gaining the benefits of our trinkets. This one is a haste stacking proc, and this one is a crit stacking proc. So in combat, our crit would be even higher than this, and our haste would also be even higher than this. It's good because, Healing Wave is hard cast, and it's quite a long cast, and 1.6 seconds would be, decent enough. Because Chain Heal has other ways to cheat its cast time. You have Tidebringer that can cheat the cast time of Chain Heal. In this patch, you had Tidal Waves, which gave you a much faster buff because it buffed the value. The cast time of Chain Heal wasn't 20% reduction, it was 36% reduction, so it was even faster. And then you play Totemic, which means you can put down Healing Stream Totem, you can put down Cloudburst, you can put down Earthenwall Totem and insta-cast free Chain Heals, right? So the cast time doesn't feel nearly as bad when you play Totemic and when you play Chain Heal, but when you play Healing Wave, you don't really have ways to cheat the cast time. So having more haste would go a long way towards making this more bearable. Same goes for Healing Rain. Going down to 1.6 seconds would feel better in general, right? So it would also be just smoother to play, considering the higher amount of hard cast times you would have as a spec that would play more around Healing Wave than you currently do as Totemic when you play with Chain Heal. So this was the dish for tonight, about 24 hours before the raid testing, just so we have this out for then going out and trying it in a raid environment in the PTR to see just how cooked this is compared to the expectations. But for today, this was the plan to go through in this PTR, thinking about a possible moving away from Chain Heal, which has gone back to take completely take over Resto Shaman ever since the tail end of Shadowlands, where Shaman was again more of a Riptide spam type of spec. Ever since then we have gone way more back into chain healing, so maybe with this new build we might not only we might catch 2 birds with 1 stone. The first bird is actually making Farseer valuable and viable, and the second stone would be moving away a bit more from chain heal. So with this out of the way, we are done with this experiment for today on the PTR. We are starting the goodbyes on this Thursday by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone who has been watching and supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, I just hope I'm gonna be right. This build is gonna be insanely OP, and my main will be shuffled to be like a monk for some reason.